My boots.
Hi guys, and welcome back to another week of Locked On NBA. I am your Monday host, Josh Lloyd. I'm also the host of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast, and I'm the lead analyst at basketballmonster.com and at Yahoo Sports Australia. Big trade happening over the last couple of days. We're going to talk about that from a couple of perspectives, as well as some news on the Lakers and some moves that they're making, and what's happening with the Marcus Gasol situation there as well. So let's get to it. Actually, before we get to it, today's episode is brought to you by Rock Auto. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. Visit rockauto.com and tell them that Locked On sent you. Blazers fans might have been sweet.
Why is the reception so bad?
Perhaps a little bit concerned with some of the direction of the front office and Neil O'Shea and the roster and building towards a championship. And yeah, the first couple of weeks of the off-season with Cody Zeller and Ben McLemore and Tony Snell, I don't really think would have got it done for Damian. But Mike Richmond of Locked On Blazers is here to talk to me about the moves that did go, or the move that did go down over the last couple of days, and that is bringing in Larry Nance. Is this a move that will appease Damian Lillard?
It depends on what you mean, Josh. I think the Blazers had a pretty good offseason. Like, people were really critical, and prior to the Larry Nance thing, I think they had not had one. But with all told, like, getting Cody Zeller on a minimum deal, and this trade that they made, just a lottery-protected first-round pick, Derek Jones for Larry Nance, like, this is a good offseason. I don't want to be too harsh on them, but was it a good enough offseason to sort of push them over the top, to make them a contender? I don't know. I think Larry Nance makes them better. I think he helps. I think he solidifies a top 7 rotation of pretty decent basketball players. But does he take them from being a pretty good basketball team to something more? I'm not quite sure.
Yeah, that's the thing. Look, there's no doubt that it's an improvement, especially defensively, when you're running Anthony Simons, Dennis Kanter, and Carmelo Anthony as your bench players throughout the playoffs last year, when none of them can defend anything. You know, getting Larry Nance in, who's a very good defender, is also a pretty good passer, is probably the best passer out of those 3 guys that were running that bench unit last year as well. It's a significant upgrade. But yeah, he's a guy that's had significant trouble staying healthy with knee problems, thumb issues, and back problems throughout his career, and that is something that he needs to shake. He's not particularly young, he's not old, but I guess he fits in the timeline with Nurkic and Lillard and McCollum there as well. Do you think that Nance is going to be someone that they slot in and start and put Norman Powell back into that bench role that he played so well in Toronto, sliding Robert Covington down to the 3 and putting those really good defenders in the front court, or will he just be that guy that plays backup 4, backup 5, plays along Covington at times when they go super big in that 3-4 lineup coming off the bench?
I do not think he starts. I think the Blazers are really committed to the Dame, CJ, Norm, Robert Covington, and Yusuf Nurkic starting lineup. The front office has been pimping that out all offseason as one of the elite starting groups in the league, which the numbers say they are, but we all watched the playoffs, Josh. We know how it ended. So, I think that's the starting group. I think Nance is your backup 4. I think hopefully they'll play him in some small lineups with him and Covington as your 4-5, and hopefully we see some jumbo lineups too with him at the 3. I know he played a little bit of 3 last year with the Cavs. Not where I would deploy him, but worth taking a look at. I just want to see how many plus defenders you can get on the floor next to Dame and CJ.
Yeah, and look, even if he's out there as the 3, like, you can just make Covington the 3 anyway. So look, they're not going to be out there too much where Nance is playing 3 alongside Cody Zeller and Yusuf Nurkic together or something crazy like that. They don't actually have any other 4s on this team unless you...
Yeah, they don't have... Exactly. He is the only power forward on the whole roster, so it's his spot to play.
Yeah, unless you're counting Nasir Little, which I don't think you really are. As a 4, he's more of a 3-4 combo like Covington and like so many of these guys who have been filling in that position. When Damian Lillard is making subtle, not trade requests, but subtle rumblings, I guess, about what he's thinking with the future, and reports are leaking out, and the frustration with the way that the roster's been constructed at times. Is this something that does help his thinking there? Is this something that pushes Portland from a first-round exit team into a conference finalist type contender?
I don't think you could say. I mean, I think it puts them in the conversation. I have trouble sitting here now and saying this is adding, the upgrade from Carmelo Anthony to Larry Nance Jr. is the difference in winning whatever it was, 6 more playoff games. That seems unlikely. That seems like maybe too much to heap on Larry Nance, even though I'm a big fan of his game. I think it puts them in the combo. This is a weird year, depending on Jamal Murray's health and Kawhi Leonard's health and what happens with the Lakers with an aging and somewhat injury-prone roster. Like, there could be an opening for a team like Portland to make a push, but that would be quite a surprise. So I think it makes the Blazers better, and I think making the Blazers better helps Dame's future with the franchise. But this was not the sort of foundation shaking, all in, go for it move. This was a solid offseason piece that makes the Blazers a little bit more competitive. And the question is, what does a little bit more competitive feel like when we get to May?
Yeah, it's exactly right. Now, I think any time that you're in a situation with a guy who's on the older side of his career, like Damian Lillard, not that he's old, but he's 30, 31, whatever age he is, he's not 24. Let's put it that way. And you come in and you trade a future first round pick away. I think that does tend to help with those players in that they're like, well, you're not worrying about the future. You're trying to do something for now, regardless of if it's getting in Larry Nance or if it's a foundational type move. Like, you are fine with sacrificing a future asset to get someone in to help now, and I think that does help that thought process with players. Now, of course, this trade was part of a three-way deal with Cleveland, which Cleveland bringing in someone like Lauri Markkanen, which we're going to talk about with the Locked On Cavs host later on. Bringing in Lauri Markkanen makes the future of Kevin Love maybe a little bit more cloudy there in Cleveland. Kevin Love, of course, everybody knows he's from the Portland area. Is there any interest in them looking to perhaps make another move for a Cavs forward?
I think typically the Kevin Love rumors have been people who are neither Kevin Love nor the Trailblazers saying, like, what a wonderful marriage this would be. But I think Kevin has openly said, I believe it was on the Chris Haynes podcast, that he would fancy a chance to return to Portland. It would be meaningful to him. The Blazers are going to go into the season with just 14 players on the roster. They are going to utilize the F word, and that's flexibility. I would probably use another word, and that is being cheap. But they're going to keep a spot.
Yeah, and they do it all the time. They always do that. Who knows? Who knows what happens? Whether Cleveland's going to buy out $60 million worth of Kevin Love's contract. Probably unlikely, but there is things that can happen throughout the season. It is interesting to see how this all pans out because, as you mentioned, the Western Conference is very weird. There are injuries to high-seeded teams with Kawhi and Jamal Murray. There's the Lakers. There's that unknown. Anyone can sneak in. We saw it happen in the Eastern Conference last year. We saw it happen with Portland 2-3 years ago to sneak into the Western Conference Finals. And we're going to have it covered for everybody about the Portland side of things over on Locked On Blazers with Mike throughout the season. Mike, thanks for coming on Locked On NBA with me.
Josh, thanks so much for having me.
If you have problems with excessive sweating, it can be embarrassing for everyone involved. Sweatblock is the product that you need. Have you never heard of Sweatblock? Well, you need to hear about it now. It is doctor created, doctor recommended, and it works for up to 7 days per use. There's also the dry shirt guarantee. If Sweatblock doesn't keep you dry, you get your money back. You can wear whatever you want to wear. Sweatblock is going to keep you covered for up to 7 days, giving you that supreme confidence to not have those unsightly armpit stains through excessive sweating. Now, this is a problem, again, that no one wants to have to deal with, whether at work, whether at home. You don't want to have these big pit stains. So what you do, get Sweatblock, get the wipes. Before you go to bed, you wipe it under your arms. You go to bed, you wake up the next morning, you have a wash, you go off to work, and Sweatblock will have you covered for up to 7 days. Sometimes you put it on twice a week, but that's it. It's not an everyday thing. It's not every couple of hours. These are one of the strongest clinical antiperspirants that you can find, and they are tested on firefighters. How hot does their work environment get? Firefighters, they use and they swear by Sweatblock. And you can get it 20% off at sweatblock.com using our promo code LOCKEDON. You can also get it at Amazon and at CVS, but 20% off at sweatblock.com. That's where you need to be going. General managers ask questions all the time, but to try and find the right players. Do they have ice in their veins? Questions of that nature, and so forth. When you're hiring, you can use Indeed assessments to help make sure you find candidates with the skills that you need. When hiring gets hard, you need Indeed, the job site that makes hiring incredibly simple. Just attract, interview, and hire. In fact, with Indeed, you can do all of your hiring in one place, even interviewing. Don't just hope your perfect candidate will find you. Indeed's hiring tools will help you cut through the noise to hire faster and smarter. In fact, Indeed Instant Match provides a list of quality candidates whose resumes are on Indeed the moment you post a sponsored job. With more than 3 million businesses worldwide that use Indeed, you can get in there to help hire great talent fast. Get started right now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/locked. A $75 credit at Indeed.com/locked. Indeed.com/locked. Offer valid through September 30th. Terms and conditions apply. All right, so here he is, the man, one of the hosts of the Locked On Cavs podcast. Chris Manning is here with us on Locked On NBA. Chris, the Cavs have made a move. They have decided to acquire Lauri Markkanen in a sign and trade. They're sending out Larry Nance. Despite Larry Nance being, I guess, the face of the franchise and the heart and soul of this team, he didn't really fit in with the time frame of the other young players on the squad. Lauri Markkanen's acquisition and the amount that they paid him, 3 years guarantee, partial guarantee in the fourth year for what, $60+ million overall, I think the contract is. It is a little strange considering the re-signing of Jarrett Allen, the drafting of Evan Mobley. Look, taking a flyer on talent is totally fine, but how do you see this Lauri Markkanen acquisition? Is it just a case of we're getting someone who is talented and we'll see where it goes, rather than the way that I guess I said that you're investing probably a little bit too much in the 4 and 5 positions?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting question. I tend to agree more with you because I think I've never been a big Lauri guy, right? Like, I've never been a particularly huge believer in what he is. There's only one skill that I think he's definitively better at than Larry Nance Jr., and that would be three-point shooting, right? Like, the Cavs need that. They've not been a good offensive team. Their spacing has been quite bad the last couple of years. So, like, I think, like, that is a thing that makes sense. If you're going to say, okay, we needed shooting, let's go get him. But he's a worse defender, worst rebounder, worst passer. Like, I don't know what else he's really providing, and it is a lot of money for a guy that seemingly didn't have like a big market this summer. And yes, like, he's younger. I think like the heart and soul of Nance can be overstated a little bit just because like he is from the area and everything. And I think like it was clear in his open letter that he penned that, you know, he did want to go somewhere where winning was kind of going to be a more immediate thing for him. So like, I get it from a talent play. But like, is Lauri Markkanen worth? He's going to make like 15 something a year. Is he worth like $13 million a year more than Dean Wade? I don't know. And like, that makes this sort of like a tricky thing. And again, to give him 4 years, even if the last year has some non-guarantee, it's steep to me. I think it's a little bit of an overpay, but I can understand how they get there, even if I don't know if I would have done the same thing.
I don't believe this, but I'm going to throw it out there because some people do seem to think that, is that the fact that they drafted Evan Mobley number 3, and then they went on to spend $100 million on Jarrett Allen, and then $60+ million on Lauri Markkanen, is there any indication there that they're like, oh, we're not sure with Evan Mobley? Maybe we're a little bit, just hedging our bets on that position, that we're not, is he the center of the future? Oh, well, you've just spent $100 million on Allen. Or can you play power forward? Well, you've just spent 60+ on Markkanen. Is there any truth to the people that might be viewing it that way?
I think it's crazy to be thinking about that in terms of Mobley. I think if you're looking at it in terms of like what the future may hold, it's okay. Like, let's see where Mobley gets. Let's give ourselves 2 options of guys in-house that we can maybe pair with him once we figure out what exactly he is. I tend to think Allen's a much better player. I think Allen could maybe not like in 3 years will maybe not be the better fit if Mobley adds weight and kind of develops into a 5. But I think it's the idea of like, okay, we want to get 2 kinds of bigs to play next to Mobley, who could be our generational franchise guy, and then see in a couple of years which one fits, and then maybe one of the contracts runs up, maybe you can trade one of them. Like, I think the Cavs, despite talking about like wanting to take a big step forward, I think internally, and I think they believe internally, and I think looking at them, I still think this is a team that is still trying to slowly level itself up here more than making a big leap. So I think they're trying to plan a little bit for the future in this move, as crazy as that sounds, considering how much money is attached to Mobley's deal, or to Markkanen's deal.
Yeah, I don't really have any sort of issues in terms of that regarding Mobley. I don't think that is any sort of indication there. I think possibly, or probably long term, the better fit will be Markkanen and Mobley, just because Mobley will play center. He's provides some duplicate skills to what Allen does in terms of rim protection, but he's a better passer, he's more dynamic, and then having Markkanen as a spacing third, I think if that ends up working, Mobley can cover some of Markkanen's defensive issues, whereas again you're sort of duplicating that with Allen out there and not bringing the shooting ability. But we will see how that all goes. But of course, re-signing Allen, drafting Mobley, bringing in Markkanen in that sign and trade, what it does where does this leave Cavs legend and notoriously pissy veteran Kevin Love? Like, what's his future? Because the Jeff Schwartz, his agent, leaking to Woj just flat out telling him, no, we haven't engaged in buyout talks. There's $60 million left for 2 years for Love. Like, what does his future hold? Is he going to get J.R. Smith this year and just say, Kev, just don't worry about it, we'll pay you, don't bother coming in? Will they buy him out? Will they send him out for a second round pick? Like, what's happening with Kevin Love?
I tend to think that the Jeff Schwartz of it all and like him saying like there's no interest is really just about money. So like I tend to think that the reality for both sides is that I think a buyout just makes the most sense, right? Like I tend to think that the biggest thing that would make sense for Kevin, like he's already made a lot of money. He's not going to have to give back all of the $60 million he's gotten from Cleveland, or is owed from Cleveland, excuse me. I think the reality here is that like he's almost 33. He's got a very short window, depending on what his health is going to be like, for him to sort of figure this out. And I look at this and I think, okay, like this is posturing. So for comparison, I think the only obvious comparison point here is the Blake Griffin situation last year, just because that's like the only, this is sort of a new development with like guys on these big contracts and the buyouts of it all. So Griffin last year, $75 million left when he was bought out, gave back 13.3. So that's a little bit under 18%. So if Love were to give back 18% of his contract, $10.8 million would he'd have to go. So he'd still get paid 50 something for Cleveland. I mean, maybe they're trying to angle it for like a little bit less than that to give back less and just keep more. Like the deal for on the Cleveland side of things, I think is already very clearly just a massive mistake. It has eaten up cap room that they could have used this summer to chase needed wing help in like a Josh Hart or something like that. Like, I tend to think Kevin would be happier in Brooklyn or with the Lakers or with the Blazers, funnily enough. Like, and it's just about finding the figure that makes most sense for everyone. I don't know if this goes into the season. I would be blown away if there's a trade because I just don't know where you're trading him, really. Like, I don't know who is, like, unless Sam Presti is going to do something with you, like, where else is he really going at this point? I think a buyout ultimately is just going to be what this comes down to. But Kevin, it would seem, is kind of indicating, hey, like, I'm going to get out of here with the most amount of money I can before I agree to a buyout and not give away a bunch of money just because frankly, the Cavs, like, you agreed to pay me this money. Like, I'm going to take all of my money, and I kind of applaud that, honestly.
Yeah, like, he shouldn't be in any rush to do it. It's like, okay, don't play, we'll pay you. Play will pay you, whatever it is. Like, he's in that position. They offer him the contract, he signed the contract. It does feel like it's not something necessarily that's going to get resolved before the beginning of the season. Maybe we're still a couple of months away from that, but I feel like it's going to be something that drags into December.
Yeah, and just with Kevin, like, I don't think he would be I just can't imagine this, like, especially with Larry gone. And him and Larry was one of the guys that he played with when he did Delhi. He's obviously back in Australia now as well. Kevin is the last guy from the 2016 title team left. Yeah. There's no one else from the 2018 team that made the finals left. Like, I don't think he has, like, deep connections with this roster at this point. I think that's pretty evident. So, like, I kind of think the reality for him is, like, I don't think there's a lot left for him here, aside from the money, honestly.
Yeah, and I'm sure, look, $60 million is a big enticement. There is no doubt.
Yeah, I would like $60 million.
I'll pass that on to David, and we can have a chat about getting you a
maybe you and I can split 60. Like, we'll just kind of like, like, David, look, you give it instead of 60 to two people, each 60 apiece, we'll just take 30. It's great.
Easy done. Negotiations sorted. Chris, you'll have it all for us over on Locked On Cavs. Yeah, so if you want to hear the news on Kevin Love, whenever something does go down, Chris and Evan will have that over on Locked On Cavs. Thanks for jumping on Locked On NBA with me, Chris.
Josh, always a pleasure.
With all the ever-increasing numbers of makes and models of cars, it's now impossible for your local chain auto parts store to stock all the parts you need, while you endure often pointless and seemingly intimidating questioning and wait while the person behind the counter orders the parts on their computer, choosing the only brand their warehouse happens to carry. You have computers with access to RockAuto.com at home and in your pocket. You can save time and money when using RockAuto. RockAuto is a family business serving do-it-yourselfers for over 20 years. RockAuto prices are reliably low for every customer, and they have everything you can need: brake parts, tail lamps, motor oil, and even new carpet. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck, and write Locked On in their "How did you hear about us" box so that they know that we sent you. Amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. rockauto.com.
This is Andy Kamenetsky, co-host of the Locked On Lakers podcast, and I love bread. Like, I really love it. I could eat 3 meals a day of nothing but bread and be totally happy, as long as it's the right kind of bread, like Dave's Killer Bread, America's #1 organic bread. It's got the killer taste, killer nutrition, killer texture. The texture is the key. Otherwise, you might as well just be eating a sponge. It's power-packed with whole grains, fiber, protein. It's the bread equivalent of a super team, the LeBron, AD, and Westbrook of breads, if you will. Whether for your morning toast, your evening sandwich, or just a snack by itself, straight out of the bag, don't even bother with a topping because it's that freaking good. Dave's Killer Bread is the bread for those who obsess over bread, like me. So visit daveskillerbread.com to learn more, and look for Dave's Killer Bread in the bread aisle of your local grocery store.
So let's bring him in now. One of the hosts of the Locked On Lakers podcast, Andy Kamenetsky, is here with me. Andy, the Lakers, we haven't spoken on Locked On NBA about much of the Lakers off-season. We'll talk about that in a second, but the latest news appears to be that within the next 24 to 48 hours that Rajon Rondo will be rejoining the Lakers after being bought out from the Memphis Grizzlies, following on with a trend of the off-season in bringing back either players who are 30 plus, maybe 32 plus, and players who contributed in a reserve role for the 2020 title team. Rondo struggled for the Atlanta Hawks last year. He struggled for the Clippers in the playoffs as well, and now he is coming back here, it looks like, to the Lakers. Is there any part of this that is Rob Pelinka, I guess, not clutching at straws, but like hoping that that magic run where Rondo was really good in that stretch in the playoffs, he was bad at other times in the season, and the season before he was pretty poor. Is it him trying to recapture that magic there? Where does he fit in this rotation? Because there is Russell Westbrook. They signed Kendrick Nunn. Is Rondo a emergency type point guard? Is he going to be a big part of this team? What is the actual plan here, do you think?
I don't expect Rajon Rondo to have a major role with this team. I mean, when you take a look at the guys who qualify as either ball handlers on this team or backcourt guys, or in certain cases both, you've got LeBron and Russell Westbrook, who are obviously going to get major minutes in terms of guys who run the offense, handle the ball, set up other guys, etc. Kendrick Nunn, I think, in terms of what happens on the court and also financially, considering he was the biggest contract that they took on of anybody not named Russell or Westbrook, it feels to me like it would be pretty irresponsible and kind of strange for Rondo's presence to cut into Nunn's minutes. They obviously have committed to Talen Horton-Tucker and believe in his potential, and he's somebody, at least right now, who is much more valuable with the ball in his hands than playing off ball. He actually showed a fair amount of promise, not just driving to the rim as a scorer, but actually starting to facilitate for guys. And for the time being, Kent Bazemore is the best defensive guard that they have, and he's arguably the best two-way role player among backcourt guys, unless Kendrick Nunn takes another step forward, or I guess maybe THT. But the larger point being, there aren't a lot of pressing available minutes, at least on paper, for Rondo. He strikes me as more somebody that would be situational in terms of the way that he's used, whether because guys are unavailable. And I also think maybe he could be somebody that helps settles a game down. Like if things are starting to get a little bit wonky or out of control, you bring in somebody like Rondo who can learn any system in like 15 minutes, assuming there's anything that's demonstratively different than when he was there a couple seasons ago. He's very good at putting guys in the right places. You put him in for about 10 minutes and that's it. And that might be it for a few games. I would be surprised, never say never.
That's okay, I'm on my way to work.
Dwight Howard comes back as the backup center again, or most likely the backup center as he was in 2020. So just bringing those guys back, and you're transitioning into the Dwight Howard situation. is there any update on Marc Gasol? Because there's some talk now that maybe he said he was coming back, but maybe he doesn't.
I haven't heard anything specific, and it might be one of those things that, you know, there could be a few factors at play. You know, how much of this it is the Lakers perhaps looking to move Marc Gasol. I know about a month or so ago, Ramona Shelburne on 710 ESPN had talked in not
Got a little
extremely
ring in
specific
action with
terms,
the
but
little
about
golf and the
potential
fucking.
deal on the table that
I have trouble calling it a Mustang,
and Marc Gasol,
but sure,
and
Mustang
sounded
SUV, electric Stang.
in
E-Stang.
actuality than what she described, but he-
They're up there. We got eyes on.
So theoretically, nothing. Could be a matter of perhaps
Tennessee, the lady, she's older. How old are the kids?
As the starting center, but I don't think he's a great fit either in terms of the tempo that this team would look to run at. I think they're going to be looking to really stay in transition a lot. That's what the 2020 championship team was at its best. You know, obviously that's not the wheelhouse of Marc Gasol. I also think that some of the things that he does well, or at least theoretically well, aren't at the same premium this season. When you take into account all the shooters that the Lakers brought in, Marc Gasol's floor spacing doesn't necessarily carry the same weight, especially because he's often a pretty reluctant shooter anyway. Like, I don't know how big of a spacing threat he represents when he often passes up shots. Like, until he starts shooting with more regularity, if I'm a defense, I will take my chance leaving him at least semi-open or hedging towards Anthony Davis or somebody else, then automatically assuming he's going to put up that shot. And then when you've got LeBron and Russell Westbrook, and to a lesser but I think still tangible degree, Anthony Davis, Marc Gasol's playmaking doesn't have the same urgency to it. And we saw that last season to some extent with Dennis Schroeder in the starting lineup with Marc Gasol, and Dennis Schroeder isn't close to the playmaker that Russell Westbrook is. So, you know, I think there's probably some ambiguity right now on a lot of different fronts in terms of where Marc Gasol exactly fits in with this team.
I think also a part of that would have to be Mark's, I don't know, not so hidden disappointment at his role being minimised and benched with Andre Drummond coming in last year. He was not happy at all. So I think that there is maybe some posturing. Like the guys like, I'm not here for this. I didn't like what happened. I'm not coming back for a small role. If you're going to do this again, I'll see you later. And that's going to be something to monitor. But again, the Lakers can always just start Anthony Davis in his best position at centre, and then there's no problem there whatsoever. Andy, Locked On Lakers, you'll be covering all of the news, Rondo signing, what happens with Gasol, what else happens with this team over the off-season 5 days a week. So make sure you are subscribing over there. Thank you for coming on Locked On NBA with me.
Yeah, thanks. Anytime.
And that does it for today's episode of Locked On NBA. Make sure you're following this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app. You can also find Locked On NBA over on YouTube. So go and subscribe over there, give us a thumbs up, leave a comment, ring the notification bell, and you'll never miss one of these episodes. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.
Jake Paul fight. Not a Jake Paul hater, but damn. I mean, I don't want him to win. I don't hate him. I guess I do hate him. No, I don't hate him. I just want him to lose. Acts like an asshole.